Howdy neighbors, East Akron here, checking in. I've been watching some of the responses to the whole Adam and Eve and the mushroom theory thing here, and felt I had to address a couple things from Piety, or I assume that's how you say your name, and if I'm getting the pronunciation butchered here, then my apologies. I'm not familiar with your videos, so just bear with me. This is, I suppose, a little off topic in regards to the original post, in terms of the whole mushroom theory thing here. I've heard this before, and I suppose Ian, like anybody else, has the right to their opinion, whatever, but that's not really why I'm on here at the moment. Piety, I'm just curious, first of all, what's with all the hostility towards Christians, Christianity in general? I mean, I'm not here to preach or anything. I'm not interested in converting you or anything like that. I mean, everybody's got their own thing, and whatever floats your boat, hey, you've got a right to it, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're wrong, at least, certainly not outright. I mean, an opinion's an opinion. That's what all this is. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm just curious where all the hostility has come from towards Christians. I mean, you say Christians just go kill yourselves, do us all a favor. I mean, that's not specifically what you said, but that was more or less what you were suggesting. So I'm just curious as to if that was just a matter of bait and switch. I mean, if that's the case, then I guess you got me. You won the $1 million prize. You got me to respond. You put inflammatory rhetoric on there, so I guess you win. 3 points from downtown for you. That aside, the whole discussion about Eden being perfect or not being perfect, and what's the big deal with eating from the tree of knowledge, whether it's an apple or whatever it is we're talking about here. I think you're kind of missing the point about the whole tree of knowledge thing. I mean, I don't consider myself a theologian. I didn't go to Bible college or anything at all, but based on all the reading I've done over the years, it seems to me the problem isn't so much Adam and Eve wanted to know more, and that was a sin. I don't think it should be viewed specifically as, well, the church wants to keep you ignorant, and you therefore, if you try to think outside the box, so to speak, here, which is what I think what we're trying to do here, in a manner of speaking, I think the problem here is it's not a matter of Adam and Eve wanted knowledge, and therefore that made them dangerous, so they were banished from the Garden of Eden. I don't know if Garden of Eden was perfect or not, but let's just go on the theory that it was. Okay, well, the problem wasn't they wanted knowledge, okay, and therefore it couldn't have been perfect whether there was a tree of knowledge there or not. I'm not really here to address that. The point is that in essence they broke the law. You and I, we break the law, then we pay the time, we do the time for the crime, or we pay the fine, whatever it is. You get a speeding ticket, you got to pay the fine. You go and murder somebody, you go to jail, or worse yet, you get the death penalty. I mean, I don't know what your opinions are on those things, but I mean, I'm just using this as an illustration here, an analogy, I suppose, really. It's a better term here. Adam and Eve, basically, they sinned, they broke God's law. That's the problem. It's not because they wanted to be smarter or anything like that. This is kind of going off on a tangent about this particular item that you brought up, but it's not a matter of, at least in my opinion, so much that they wanted to know more, and then therefore that was a bad thing, and that's why they got thrown out of paradise, or whatever you want to call it. They broke God's law, they didn't trust in God, and so therefore that was man's downfall, in essence, okay? Another thing I wanted to touch on, you were talking about, well, I don't know, how do we know this happened, because you used the example of, well, I don't know what my folks were doing 5 generations ago. Well, not everybody's into genealogy. I've done a little bit of it, and even I don't know a whole lot about what most of the people in my family tree were doing 5 generations ago, maybe 3 or 4, maybe, at least in passing. At least I know where they were, but that's a whole other thing. But I mean, my point here is that, does it really matter whether it happened or not, or if it happened the way it's believed, or whatever? I mean, if it didn't happen but everybody believed, is that necessarily a bad thing? I'm just putting this out here in terms of a matter of faith, to take a leap of faith, to use the overworked phrase here. I think the point here is that if you can trust in something you don't understand, or that you don't totally have all the facts for, or whatever they are, simply because it's beyond our ability to understand, or beyond our ability to have everything in front of us to say, one way or another, well, I know there's a God, or I know there was an Adam and Eve, or I know there was a tree of life, or any of this stuff. I mean, everybody's got a right to opinions on all that stuff, and everybody's got different interpretations, and I think that's something else that we could describe and get into further, but I won't here. I mean, if it happened, it happened. If it didn't, it didn't. But I mean, I don't think we necessarily should take a dim view of people who have a faith in anything, whether it's in God or anything else. There's almost a cliched example that churchgoers will tell you, well, I've got faith that the chair I'm sitting in right now here, and I'm sitting in a chair, I've got faith that it's going to hold me up. When I sit down, I don't automatically assume it's going to just fall apart. That could happen, at least in theory, and maybe once in a great while it does happen, but it doesn't mean it will. So, I mean, and that's not the best example, but I mean, I think that's what some of this is about. If the downfall of man and the eating from the tree of knowledge, if it didn't happen the way it didn't happen, if it didn't happen the way we understand it, or if it didn't happen at all, does it really matter? I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not making any real judgment calls on what you said as far as that's concerned. I'm just saying, I'm assuming you've got some kind of faith of some sort in something, whether, if it's not God, you got faith in something, in somebody, or an ideal, an idea of some sort out there. There's some sort of belief that you have in something. And so I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just saying that I think maybe you were kind of overlooking the base point here. It wasn't so much, being knowledgeable is a sin. It was just a matter they broke God's law. I think that's what all that was about, as far as getting tossed out of the Garden of Eden. So you tell me what you think. I don't know. And as far as the whole bit about, kids being sexually assaulted by preachers or whatever, I mean, we could sit here and debate why God allows those kind of things to happen, and I'm not here to do that. And I'm not here to point fingers in any other church groups or anything. I'm a Protestant myself, and I think a lot of what you're alluding to was, I assume at least, has been pretty much all the stuff that's all the criticisms that have been over recent years, last 10 years or so, about activity that's gone back even much further than that in the Catholic Church primarily, or at least that's the area that's gotten all the attention, with priests that have sexually abusing children, and I think that's an awful thing to be going on, but I think you're painting maybe too broad of a brush, to say the least, and assuming that goes on in all churches, or even all Catholic churches or whatever. You weren't even making that distinction. I think that's kind of frankly a dangerous thing, if I may put it that way, to just assume that all the people that are in church leadership positions are awful. I mean, everybody's human. We shouldn't be putting them on a pedestal necessarily and assuming they're God-like figures, because they're not. We're all human beings. We all make mistakes. Now, that doesn't excuse things that have happened in the past. I wouldn't say that for a minute, but I think you're almost being too much of a cynic, and I would not consider myself an idealist in the least, because I've lived already too long for that to be true anymore, at least in a pure sense. I'm definitely a cynic about a lot of things, but I think you're almost a little too far down that road, and I don't have any suggestions for you. It's just an observation. So anyway, it was a thought-provoking post you put up there, and I'm glad you did. I just wanted to put a few things out there. So got any responses, feel free. Thanks a lot. Bye.